Today's webinar, Best Practices for Encrypting Macs. My name is Nick Thompson and I am with Jamf Software, and I'll take you through today's webinar. Our agenda today, we're going to talk about FileVault 2 disk encryption. Since this is the best practices for encrypting Mac, we need to start off with a base of what the technology is that allows us to do that. Next, we'll be talking about enforcing encryption. So what does it mean to have all of your Macs in your environment and to say everyone needs to be encrypted? We'll talk about that. Afterwards, we'll move into how do you manage these encryption keys? How do you keep them all in one spot, and how do you handle institutional keys versus individual keys? And finally, we'll do some reporting on, we'll cover reporting on the encryption status of your devices so you can prove that your Macs are indeed encrypted. We'll be doing some demos throughout the process as well, and towards the end we'll do Q&A. We should last about half an hour from up until 2:30 for the official presentation, and then we'll set aside half an hour after that up until 3 p.m. For Q&A. For anyone that would like to stick around. So, before diving into FileVault 2, we first need to understand a little bit about the Casper suite. Not everyone on today's presentation is using the Casper suite, so it's important to just do a quick overview. Now, we are Jamf Software, and our tagline is to help organizations succeed with Apple. We've been managing Macs we started managing them back in 2002, long before these things were popular. And we do that by our main product called the Casper Suite. And the Casper Suite is a set of administrative tools that help you manage your Apple devices. At the heart of this suite is something called the JSS, or the Jamf Software Server. That's the management server component. It also includes a set of applications that run natively on Mac OS X. These apps are used for Mac management by building packages, remote access to client machines, imaging, as well as enrolling devices. It also includes a set of applications for your end users, such as Casper Focus and Self-Service. All of these together make up the Casper Suite. The JSS, or again, Jamf Software Server, really acts like a web server which communicates to your devices over the internet, specifically over HTTPS. The JSS can run on an OS X, Windows, or Linux server for on-premise deployments. It will work with just about any modern server, but do check out our technical specs just to make sure. We also offer a service where we can host the JSS for you in the cloud. Again, reach out to us for all the details on that. I want to also talk about enrolling for a second here, just because this is really what enables the JSS to talk to your Macs. You need to enroll your Macs first so that you can say, have all of them have FileVault 2 turned on. And these are the most common ways that we find people are enrolling them. It can be through imaging, where you build a standard image and the enrollment package is baked into there. Or you can do a network scan, where you can scan a list of a range of IP addresses to find Macs that are unmanaged. And we have an app for that called Recon, which is part of the suite. Users can also enroll themselves via a URL, where they just visit the URL, log in, and they download a package file, which enrolls the Mac. And lastly, probably the most popular version in recent times here is Apple's device enrollment program, which automatically and wirelessly enrolls your Macs to the Casper Suite. And it's all based on the products that you buy from Apple. You flag them for automatic enrollment. Works great. Not available in all countries, but do reach out to Apple. And if you are doing anything with rolling out Macs, highly recommend that you sign up for this program. We do have other webinars specifically about device enrollment program. So now that we know a bit about the Casper Suite and how to enroll devices, let's dive into FileVault 2. To set a little context here, we want to take a look at security in general. It's obviously been a major consideration for organizations over the past few years, with some high-level or high-profile cases of companies suffering from security breaches. Plus, you have things like stolen laptops, hacking, social engineering, etc. Add on top of that, certain industries have compliance requirements. Whether it's in healthcare or in other industries, they usually require that your devices have some sort of encryption on them. All this together has led organizations to set out policies that say our devices need to be encrypted. And why do they do that? Well, it's because encryption really ensures that the disk that you have, you can't take that and plug it into a different device and get the data off there. It essentially scrambles the data that's on that disk. Works great. So how does this relate to what Apple's doing? Well, Apple has something called FileVault. And FileVault is the built-in disk encryption tool for OS X. It was introduced way back in 10.3, and it only included partial encryption back then. It would only encrypt your home folder. But ever since 10.7 Lion, it now encrypts the entire disk. In fact, you can even tell it to encrypt external hard drives too. The keys that lock up that encryption can be centrally stored then as well too, making it really easy to manage them. Lastly, Apple has gone through a certification called FIPS 140-2, which is for U.S. government and basically states that it meets their requirements for encryption. So if you're in the government space, you can know right out of the bat that Apple's native disk encryption is certified. What does this look like from an end user perspective? Well, if you wanted to encrypt a Mac that wasn't via the Casper suite, you would go here. This is the System Preferences pane that allows you to simply turn on FileVault. And what's really nice about all this is it's a native experience, right? The speed and performance of FileVault is really unprecedented. A modern Mac plus a solid-state drive really means you can't even tell that a disk is encrypted. There's almost zero performance loss. If you're using third-party tools to try to encrypt your Mac, you might notice that it tends to break almost with every OS X update. By using Apple's native FileVault 2, you ensure that it's always up to date and it always works with new OS X updates. And that's our philosophy here at Jamf, is to leverage Apple's native tools. So now we have some background on FileVault. Let's talk about how you can enforce your clients, your Macs in your environment to be encrypted. So we talked about enrolling and we talked about the JSS. How do you actually do something to your Macs? Well, there's two ways that you can do something to your Macs. And that's either via a configuration profile or a JSS policy. A configuration profile is a little XML file that communicates to your Mac over Apple's Mobile Device Management Framework, or MDM framework. And it contains values that would be found in System Preferences to say turn certain things on or turn certain things off. Works great for a lot of things. Now, we take that a little bit further with the JSS and the Casper suite through a policy. Now, when you install Casper Suite on one of your client Macs, it actually installs a little agent. And that agent communicates back to the JSS every 5 minutes if you choose to set it at that rate. And it goes deeper and it executes commands based on a hidden management account on there. So you have root access to the Mac, and that's what the policy is all about. So how does this relate to encrypting? Well, you can do encryption via two different ways. You can do it either via config profile or this policy. If you do it via the config profile, again, it's applied right in the background via MDM. And you can choose to send the keys either back to the JSS or to a specific URL that you set up. There's only one option, and it's enabled automatically on the next login. And it supports the two different keys that are available. We'll talk about the keys a little bit later. On the policy side, though, you can have it so it pre-alerts your users. It sends a little alert to them that says your Mac is now going to be encrypted. Please reboot to start that process. You can also use triggers to apply a policy. Triggers are great. Triggers can be something like if the Mac logs out, or if the Mac logs in, or if it's at its recurring check-in time that you set to choose, or once a day, whatever you would like it to be. You can use those triggers. It automatically sends the keys back to the JSS, and you can defer to enable FileVault after a certain number of logins. I believe the max number is 6. So if you wanted to not have your users necessarily enable encryption right away, you could defer it for a few logins. And again, it also supports both institutional keys. What's nice though is you can use these in combination to cover all of your use cases. So if you decide to do policies for all of your Macs that you're issuing to everybody that are enrolled with DEP, that's great. But maybe you want to use a config profile for users that bring their own Macs in. Whatever you would like to do. Essentially, you can use both, or you can use either or. With that, let me show you now the JSS and show you how to enable FileVault. On the right here is my Safari window, and this is the JSS. On the left side of the screen, this is a Mac that I've got set up with a little external camera pointing at it. And in the JSS, you can see a couple of different things. This is the main dashboard page, and these are a couple of different policies that we've set up in previous demos that shows you the status of them. And along the top, I've got a few different tabs. I'm going to go to the Computers tab in this demo. Along my sidebar, I've got a number of different items to choose from. If I wanted to search my inventory, I could go there. But really what we wanted to talk about is policies and configuration profiles. I'll show you config profiles first, but what I'm actually going to do is use a policy. If I were to do config profiles, I would just add a new one. And along the side here, I've got all my different options. This is where I could set the values. Notice how this looks exactly like system preferences to say require FileVault. And that's where I've got my two different key options. But I want to do a policy instead. Again, it's up to you if you want to do a policy or a profile. Policies, I think, just tend to work a little bit more robustly. So I'm going to give this a name. Enable FileVault. And if I had a whole lot of policies in my JSS, I could do some organization to them. I could scope them to a specific site that I have, or I could create a number of different categories. Maybe this one is a utility, and that's how I choose to categorize them. You can define all these categories inside of the JSS. Next, I've got my triggers. So I can choose when to initiate this policy. And again, I've got startup, login, logout, etc. For this case, I'm going to say have it trigger on the recurring check-in. And I'm going to have it execute once per computer. There's a few other options down here too. If I wanted to delay the time of this policy, I could set all that up down here. All right, so now I've got my general settings figured out. I'm going to choose disk encryption now from the left. And I'm going to tell it to apply the disk encryption configurations that I've already set up. I could also issue a new recovery key if needed to. The settings here are defined in these settings up here, which I won't go into right now, but really it just says what type of key do you want to issue. And in this case, I want it to require FileVault on the next login. I choose who I want to scope this computer to. I'm only going to do one computer right now, but you could choose to scope it to all of your computers just by simply saying all computers. You could also set up groups in here too. I mentioned self-service in the Casper Suite overview. Self-service is really the internal app store, if you will. That's part of the suite. I'm not going to put this one in self-service because I want it to just apply to the Mac right away. And if I wanted any other sort of user interaction, I could say, here's a message for them to tell it it's running, or if it needs to be rebooted, a pre-message is populated in here. All right, so I've got everything set that I want. I just hit save. And now the JSS is going to talk to my Mac here, and it's going to enable that policy. So I've already done some rebooting on my Mac here. And a user is already set up, but encryption is not set up on here right now. So when I go to log in, I'm going to get notified to enable encryption right away. There we go. I'm going to move the camera in just a smidge so you can see it. So it says, your administrator requires that you enable FileVault. You must enable FileVault now. If I clicked cancel, it would simply just put me back to the login screen. I couldn't get anywhere. So I'll enable it. And it does take a little bit of time, so we'll just let that run in the background. Let's go back to our slides now while that encrypts. So after everything's encrypted, what do you do with these keys? You need to do something with these keys. Keys really are the method that lets you unlock the encryption protocol. Encryption keys do not equal your password. However, they can be used to reset your password altogether. So if your users tend to forgot a password, you could use that key to plug it in and actually reset it. There are two different types of keys that you can do. You can either do an individual key, where each Mac generates a specific one, or you can do an institutional key, where you've defined one key from the very beginning that can unlock all of your Macs, basically a master key, if you will. It is completely possible to do both. So if you would like to do, individual keys across all of them and one institutional key, totally possible. New keys can also be reissued. So if you decide to give somebody their key and they use it to unlock their machine, and you don't want them to have that anymore, well, you can simply reissue them a new one. Where are these keys actually stored? A number of different places. When you turn on FileVault for the first time, it gives you the option to actually just save it into a text file if you'd like to. Probably not the best thing to do, but you could certainly keep it in a text file. If your Mac isn't managed, you could have Apple store your encryption key. Great for consumers, maybe not so great for enterprise or for education. You could have it directed back to any really URL that you'd like it to go to. So if you have some sort of locker for these things, you could send it back to a specific URL. But what probably makes the most sense is to send it to your JSS. And where does that live in your JSS? right in your inventory tab. So when you go into your Macs again and you look at your inventory, you can click on that management tab and reveal the recovery key there. And it's that long string of alphanumeric characters. So now that you've encrypted your Mac and you're managing your keys, you probably want to start doing some reporting on everything, right? And that's where Casper Suite really shines with reporting. This is a screenshot of one of the reporting tabs where I've got the Mac that we're working on pulled up, and it shows you just a lot of information. Shows you when it last checked in, shows you the IP address that it's using, shows you the operating system that it's running. Pretty much when you go to the Apple menu and choose About This Mac, almost everything inside of there gets dumped into the JSS. And you can then do a lot of advanced reporting. We do reporting kind of two different ways. We've got smart groups and we've got static groups. Smart groups is a dynamic group that is constantly searching for different values of criterias that you define. And you can even set up alerts too to say if Macs don't fit into the criteria that you've predefined. This is just a screenshot of the different FileVault criterias that are available. So you can report to see if the Mac is even eligible for FileVault. You can report to see if it's an individual key or an institutional key. It will show you the encryption state of the hard drive down to the different partitions on the drive. It will show you what type of recovery key it is, what the current status is, so if it's enabled or not enabled, and it'll show you what users have been enabled for FileVault as well. The last one is the older legacy FileVault. That's the pre-Lion, the pre-10.7 one. So if you happen to have Macs that are still that old, you could still use them. So let's take a look at that inside of the JSS now, the keys and reporting. On the right here, my Mac is still encrypting. You'll notice the timing is coming up here. Sorry for the brightness. There we go. So let's take a look at reporting. So I'll go into a smart computer group. And these are some of the reports that have been pre-built already, but I want to create a new one. So I'll just click New and give it whatever name you'd like to name it. Here's where you can get notified. So if group membership changes, you can get an email notification. Really handy to stay up to date on those things. And here's where I've defined my criteria. Some of the top criteria is listed right above, but I want to see all of it, so I'll choose this option. And notice there's just a long list of things that you can pull from. So again, I'll say, let's look for FileVault status is, and if I don't know what the values are, I've got this nice little ellipsis button that shows me. And I'll say, all partitions encrypted. And I could just save that. And now it will run a report to say, show me all of those Macs. This one obviously hasn't finished yet, so it's not quite in my reporting. But I do want to show you our production side of things. So the JSS that I was using here in this tab is really just our demo JSS. But the JSS on my right tab here is the one that we use internally at Jamf. And so some of these reports that we've set up here are very advanced. There's a lot of different ones in here. For example, we've got one that says, show me all FileVaults 2 that have valid encryption, valid individual keys, and the encryption state is not encrypted. And this is kind of the output that you get from it. Again, a lot of information. If you were in an industry that needs to report on compliance, well, you could easily take this and export it out to a CVS file or just print it, and you could easily prove that, yes, all of my Macs are indeed managed. You can take a look at some of the other reports that we have set up. Again, these are all right here, dynamically updating based on check-ins to the JSS, and is defined by a certain set of criteria here. You can see the different criteria that it's been set and viewing them again. And you can customize these columns too. If you notice in the first report that I showed you, they had different columns, and you completely customize those different columns as you'd like. This particular one that I'm in right now, the production one, I can't actually change anything because our IT department has set it up that way. That's another feature of the JSS that you can do, is you can do tiered administration essentially. Okay. Looks like the encryption process is just finishing up, hopefully, on our Mac. And so I want to show you that device. So again, here it is. And here's all the different inventory options that are available for it. And if we go down to our drive, here we can see the report on there. Look at that. It's updating as we speak. 97% done. It's got a valid encryption key. We did not use an institutional key, but again, you could do both if you wanted to. I just chose to only do the individual keys right now. Between individual and institution is really up to you guys about what makes sense if you would like to have that one master key to unlock all your devices. And if I went over to my management tab, I see that FileVault 2 is indeed configured, and I can get that recovery key. So if I forgot my password on my Mac, I could just type in that key, and it would completely reset it here. We are just coming up on the half hour here, so I wanted to show you the password reset if our Mac can finish decrypting here. So let me just go back to our slides real fast. So to wrap up, FileVault is really the best way to manage encryption on your Macs because it's native, and because you can take the keys and you can store them centrally inside of the JSS. You're not dealing with any sort of extra bulk on top of the operating system. It's all native in there. Now, you might probably have further questions about how to specifically set up all of this stuff. Highly recommend that you reach out to us. We've got engineers that are available in a number of different geos that can answer these questions for you. We offer a free trial. So if you'd like to try the JSS in your environment for about 2 weeks, we offer that. And you can try it out on some test Macs, see what it's like to encrypt and decrypt a computer. We've got technical papers, we've got white papers, we've got folks that man our live chat, and of course people that answer our phones anytime. We also have something called Jamf Nation. I would highly recommend, if you have not heard of Jamf Nation, check it out. Click on the community tab on our website. And Jamf Nation is a free forum. It's a free forum where Mac administrators come together and they share their best practices. And it typically goes beyond the walls of Casper Suite. Talking about how to deal with the next operating systems, talking about how to deal with users. A really great way to connect to the community and learn what other people are doing together. In addition to everything on our contact page, we also have a number of different webinars too. So if you wanted to learn a bit more about that device enrollment program that I talked about earlier, we've got a webinar specifically for that. Or if you're in the education space, you want to know how to deploy iPads, we have that too. So to be thoughtful of everyone's time here, I want to thank you and take care.